It's now 3 days to the inauguration of a new president in Nigeria. As Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu prepares to take the oath of office, the president-elect is faced with the articulation of a practical strategy on how to structurally transform Nigeria's economy. The incoming president will need to prioritize talents and proficiencies to change the bleak outlook of the dwindling economy that will be bequeathed to him next week by the outgoing president Muhammadu Buhari. Tinubu, during his campaign, reiterated his resolve to urgently address the fiscal, monetary, and trade reforms to effectively increase domestic production immediately if elected. The ultimate aim being to ensure better macroeconomic stability by accelerating inclusive growth and job creation across Nigeria. Likewise, Tinubu has stated that the private sector will be the prime driver of economic progress of Nigeria, with his administration providing the enabling framework for the economic sector. Joining us now to dissect Tinubu's economic agenda for Nigeria is Professor Adi Bongo, Professor of Economics, Lagos Business School. Good morning, Professor Bongo, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. I'm happy to be with you this morning.
Morning. Well, the introduction already says it all. The president-elect, the incoming president, says, there will be fiscal reforms, there will be macroeconomic stability. But, as our correspondents have pointed out in looking at this subject, they say the devil is in the details. Debt overhang. A weakened currency.
I can't agree any less or more.
Yeah. So what will you say should be the main priorities, from fuel subsidy to fiscal problems, to budget deficit, to unemployment crisis, to all the issues within the economy? Without the economy, what can anybody do?
Definitely, there is nothing anybody can do without the economy. I think the starting point for this administration would not be about any highfalutin policy, how to stem the exchange rates and all of that. There is, like your analyst said, that the devil is in the details. The challenge that we have in Nigeria is that the government, not just this outgoing administration, over time, they have not really been very transparent. They have not been very truthful, especially when it comes to the fiscal system. The government's projection of revenues and expenditures, Dr. Bati, you've been in government, you know that it is more or less back of the envelope sort of calculation. There is no evidence, there is no strong database behind the projections that government makes of its revenues and expenditure. In fact, the truth is that sometimes they have to jack up their intended, expected revenue, such that they will, see that their expenditure, the difference between the expenditure and the revenue in the budget, which is, will be within the Fiscal Responsibility Act stipulation of 3%. But they just want to maintain that 3%. But the revenue projection is completely arbitrary. It's something they just, arrived at, intuitively. The same thing with the spending. So expenditures are never tagged to real projects that are verifiable. So that's why you will go to a ministry, you look at the ministry's budget, a ministry will be spending, what another ministry will have as its total allocation only on, something flimsy items such as office stationery, So that tells you that they first of all project their expenditure before they now begin to look for where to spend the money. So if we can plug the leakages in the system, this is not rocket science. It is a simple thing. Let us start by, first of all, rationalizing the budget system. Right now, the truth is that they are not telling us the truth. the budget that each year they pronounce is all lies. Sorry that I have to be, that's crude, but that is the way it is. The budget is a crude one. It is not rational in any way. So the first thing is for this incoming administration of Senator Ahmed Bola Tinubu to begin by rationalizing the budget. Let us have some data to back, some evidence to back the claims that they make. Because as it is right now, we do not know what the revenue is in actual terms. They just jack it up anywhere they like. We do not also know what our expenditures are in truth. And that's the reality. So that is where the process of reforming the system will start. Except that we know that because everything is just, rapid escalation. Okay, so if we can bring it to proper judicious estimates, then of course we will see that we have a lot of savings. What they say that their expenditures are no real expenditures. They are not spending those monies. They are just embezzling them because they just calculate things, on the spur of the moment. When they go to fake meetings, they ask questions, how much this, that. There are no evidence behind all of this. That is the truth. So let us start from there. Then again, we have too many MDAs. Remember the Orosanya report. So the only way that this incoming administration, because they already challenged with credibility and acceptability, because more Nigerians rejected them at the polls than voted for them. So the only way they can restore their trust, the trust of the masses and the credibility of the administration, and that they are sincere and honest, is by implementing, in its entirety, the Orosanya report, okay, which has rationalized the agencies of government. In fact, more than half of the agencies that exist today should not be there. We have so much duplications. And that goes up the more needed government revenue. So we need to implement the Orosanya report. So if these two things can be done, plug the leakages, rationalize the agencies of government, then I can tell you that would be a good demonstration of good faith.
Okay. So a couple of things I want to just postulate around ideas, and it's good it's a conversation. Number one will be, what should be the micro-granular benchmarks for what we'll even call economic success? Is it low unemployment numbers, double-digit economic growth, increased human capital development index, and things like, pervasively around rule of law, civil rights and liberties? Could we set targets on those benchmarks, number one? Number two, you talked about embezzling. Could this Singaporean model be a silver bullet? So I'm talking about Singaporean model because Singapore has got about two sovereign wealth investment companies, but one is like a government investment vehicle, which is called the Temasek Holdings. So Temasek Holdings has over 10, 15 companies under it, which involves the investment in biotechnology and pharmaceuticals. Singatel, Singapore National Telecommunication, is also there. CNA, that's the country's media outfit, is also there. And this company owns about $403 billion in assets. Last year, I think it churned out about 21 billion USD to the Singaporean government. So is that also a model we can use to be able to bring about accountability? Because if you do that to a large extent, what will happen is that most of the things that are now run as government parastatal definitely will go out of the way. Because, for instance, if NTA is properly harnessed, I don't see why NTA cannot be giving Nigerian government billions of dollars in revenue rather than subvention. NTA alone, the archiving, if NTA properly sells and licenses its archives, it should be a big money spinner. But these things are run as parastatal. So can we use that Temasek Holdings, idea for this? It's just an open conversation. You can stab on the other part you want.
Yeah, I mean, you are very correct. Not just Singapore. We know that Indonesia, which is, when it comes to comparison, I would like to, compare Nigeria to Indonesia because we share so much in common with Indonesia. Our past are so similar because we had, for many years, Indonesia was very draconian. dictatorial. You know, they had the military junta, and then had, you know, when you talk about crony capitalism, I think that was formulated in the context of Indonesia, and that applies largely to us. And also ethnically diverse, with the population similar to us, unlike Singapore, which is a very small nation, and they have had some kind of tendacious leadership from the beginning. Now, in Indonesia, when they wanted to embark on reform, you remember Suharto and Sukarno and all those families. But at the point where they were challenged by of course, the social unrest, they had to embark, you know, by embracing open market principles. One of the things they did was even to liberalize and privatize customs. I mean, just imagine that. Indonesia privatized customs. And then that started to yield enormous benefit. In fact, some people will link Indonesia's transformation to that singular move. And that's exactly something, you know, linked to what you said in the context of Singapore, you know, using the private corporatist model in managing so many of the affairs of government. Truly, I think that also goes in line with the Orasanya report. Okay, so any sincere reform should really look towards bringing in all those kind of private sector expertise and corporatist sentiments and discipline into the management of public affairs. Of course, that will guarantee us the benefit that we are looking for. Now, you are talking about indicators. Which one is the most important, whether it is unemployment or economic growth? I mean, I can tell you that economic growth trumps everything. Well, let's look at, you know, there is this in economics, I like to use it, the rule of 70, that if a variable grows at the rate of x, okay, that variable will double every 70 over x years. So for instance, let's say the economy grows at the rate of 10% per annum. So that means that in about 7 years, our income per capita would have doubled. So there is nothing like economic growth. It is the most important economic indicator, just like the GDP is the most important. And in fact, some economics, some people say that the GDP is the greatest invention of man when it comes to the social world. So let us have double-digit growth for the first time. I mean, we used to have that under Obasanjo regime. And that's why the economy sustained that sort of momentum for a very long period of time. And that took care of unemployment, took care of social unrest, took care of all the problems. So it is the economy, as they say, is the economy stupid. So let us have double-digit growth. If the incoming administration could concentrate on that, how do you give us double-digit economic growth? For me, not because I'm an economist, but simply that, you know, if you look at other parts of the world, that is the only thing that works. So let us not, the outgoing administration targeted on inequality. They felt that by giving handouts to the poor, they will alleviate poverty. But, you know, you never solve the problem of poverty by addressing the poor. No, you always have the poor with you anyway. But that's not what I'm saying. If you want to eliminate poverty or address poverty, you have to look at economic growth. And again, you don't say, I want to grow SMEs, I want to do this. No, focus on economic growth. When the economy grows, in fact, what grows the economy is actually the cumulative aggregate growth of the individual firms that make up the economic system. So if the economy is growing, that is an indicator that all the segments of that economy, you know, are all doing very well. So let us target and focus on how to generate double-digit economic growth. That will take care of unemployment, that will take care of social unrest, that will take care of health. And by the way, if you draw a graph of the GDP, you will see that the GDP is strongly, positively correlated with all the development indicators, however contrived.
Okay, Professor Bongo, let's bring this conversation to the level of practical issues. Number one, you are talking about GDP growth. Only yesterday, I got a text message from Rochu Sudiri, our business correspondent, who is working on our behalf in Sharm el-Sheikh, attending the AFDB. And he said under President Muhammadu Buhari, that GDP growth in the last 8 years has been 1.35% in the last 8 years. So I get your point. When you say double-digit growth is more desirable, but when last did we record that in this environment? We blame external factors, but there are local factors. But the question I really want to ask you is this. That connection between the economy and the challenge of insecurity. Because this week we've been talking about insecurity. Now we have moved to economy. We have talked about education also this week. How can we grow any economy if there's insecurity? One. Number two, what is your view about removal of fuel subsidy? Should it be removed? When? Now that the buck has been passed to the incoming administration. These are practical things that Nigerians can identify with.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bati. These are very deep questions. The first one is the link between insecurity and economic growth. How do you grow the economy when you are challenged on all fronts by insecurity? But the truth of the matter is that when this economy was doing well, and data is there to evidence this, we had lower incidence of inequality, insecurity. I understand that insecurity, especially in the northeastern fringes of the country, have been kind of endemic and been there over time, especially starting from 2009, 2010 or thereabout, when we saw the Boko Haram insurgency. But beyond that, but we saw the escalation and this endemicity of insecurity growing, especially in the Buhari years. The eastern region, the west, and the middle belt. I can understand that of the middle belt because already I did some research which linked it to the aridification, desertification coming from the north, pushing pastoralists towards the southern, in search of pasture and all of that. But that's a conversation for a different day. But we saw the escalation of insecurity, especially during these 8 years of Buhari ill-fated regime. So we've seen it all over the country. So what we need to ask the question, what really led to the escalation of insecurity all over the place? First of all, it's because of economic hardship. That's first. That's the number one. And then the second one is the feeling of alienation of large segments of Nigerian public under the Buhari administration. Okay, so we saw that some areas felt highly isolated and marginalized by his administration, not only in the sharing of political offices and appointments, but also in the allocation of projects. So some people felt highly alienated, and that's what actually spurred insecurity. But given at that, I still believe that when people have incomes, when people have strong expectations and hopes, so the insecurity will be reduced. It's not just insecurity. We have this feeling of anomie among our youth today. So everybody, in fact, not just the youth, people my age, people older than myself, and the younger people, everybody's looking for to japa, as they say. Everybody wants to leave the country. Why? Because there is this feeling of anomie. People don't feel safe in Nigeria. Even people who have very well-paying jobs, some people are actually taking lower pay elsewhere in Canada or in the US or in the UK just to have that feeling of serenity that we used to enjoy in Nigeria that completely dissipated and evaporated under Buhari. So we need to have that restored. But I still believe that everything is tied to a strong and growing economy where people believe in the government, where people feel that they're part of what is going on. So there is that feeling of alienation. That is what the incoming administration needs to address. And then how do they address this? Okay, it is by the kind of appointments they make as well, and the quality of people they bring into the administration. Now that takes care of that. Now the issue of fuel subsidy, whether it should be removed and when. No, Dr. Bati, honestly, we have to do away with the fuel subsidy. Now, you know what? The fuel subsidy rewards only the elite, the middle class, and the rich people in Nigeria. That's the truth. Because if you go to the rural areas, you will hardly buy fuel at the pump price. Go away from Lagos, okay? Go to the hinterlands, go to the rural areas of Nigeria. There is no single place where you will buy, as of today, you will never get 185 naira to the liter that people buy in Lagos. I can tell you that when I travel to my village, which is in Imo State, I know how much I pay. So the least you can buy today is 250 naira to the liter. Okay? And it is, in fact, there it just look like the whatever the agency that enforces prices, they do not reach there. They do not reach there at all. So if you go away from the urban centers in Nigeria, you will hardly buy fuel. So eventually, the fuel subsidy that is supposed to help the poor actually helps in intensifying their poverty, okay, and misery. So fuel subsidy as it is today only rewards the rich. So I think it has to go. And again, it has become a constant drain on government, on the treasury. All right, but the removal of fuel subsidy is one thing, but then how do you utilize the savings coming from that? That is a different kettle of fish. And again, everything speaks to the quality of people that the incoming administration will bring in. As it is today, if what has happened in the past 8 years is to be relied on, people see government appointment as a favor, as a call to, kind of come and shop and chop. That is how they see it. They do not see it as a call to work, as a call to service. That's the problem. Because if the people see the enormity, as I will always say, I do not envy the Bola Tinubu administration. I do not envy him. Neither do I envy anybody that he will tap to join him, in leading this country. Because the challenges are so enormous that anybody who is sincere and who wants to discharge honest work to the citizens will really feel challenged. You have that sense of inadequacy, because the challenges that Buhari and his tag team are leaving behind are so enormous that it will take the best of brains and the people who have, altruistic spirit. It will challenge them to their wit's end before they could actually reach the end of the tunnel. So this is it. But if it is just business as usual, bringing politicians who see that as a call to come and chop, then I'm sorry, maybe Buhari's years would actually be better.
Right, well, that's a very big thank you to you, Dr. Bati.
Well, thank you, Professor Bongo, for joining us. Thank you very much indeed.